Welcome to the HR Stories podcast, listener question edition, where there is a lesson in every story. Each week, the team at HR Stories podcast shares questions from our podcast audience and provides tangible, practical advice that everyone can use to get HR right. Our hosts today are management and HR consultants Chuck Simikian and John Thalheimer. What is on your mind today? Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are here at HR Stories Podcast, question and answer edition, where there is a lesson in every question. Good morning, Chuck. How are you?
I'm great. Of course, it could be morning, evening. You know, what do they say in the Truman Show? Good morning, good evening, and good night. You know, we're going to cover all the bases, and maybe some of our listeners are like, the Truman Show, isn't that classic movie? The classic? I'm like, yeah, maybe. But we're doing great, John. I'm excited to be here. I love the Q&A session because these are real situations with real people that are managers, are HR practitioners and professionals, and they have questions. They either send them to us or they post them in our HR Team of One community, which is that free Facebook user group. Folks, it's HR helping HR. It warms my heart to see all of the HR community supporting each other. We do allow people to post anonymously because sometimes people have sensitive situations, but sometimes they post with their names. Two of our questions today, we've had names, and one is from just an anonymous poster on the HR Team of One community on Facebook.
Yeah, great. Are you ready for the questions, Chuck? Are you ready for these questions?
I am. Can I ask the first question? Because I know you had a great answer to this when it was first posed.
Sure, ask away. What's the question?
All right. Okay, this is from Brittany on from the community, the Facebook HR Team of One community, and she says she posted it out there for the group. She says, "Does anybody have any good ideas on how to make your Indeed postings stand out and look less basic and dry?" And I understand with Indeed, but any job postings, John, what do you think could help make them look less basic and dry?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question because if you go to Indeed, you go to any of these job postings and you think, oh, I'm going to post my job on there, there are going to be hundreds of the same job title that you have, right? And so there's all of there. And so how do I get it to stand out above the rest? And how do I make people there? And it really goes down when I'm training this in our class, in our workshops, it really goes down to, why should I, as a candidate, choose you? Why should I choose your organization? Now, Chuck, you and I have been in HR. We've been hiring people for years. And there was back in the day, you would just put up an ad, right? And 100 people would come back and just apply for it, right? It's not happening today. People are applying, right? There's ghost bots and all that kind of stuff. But we have to make it so, why should I choose you? Why should I choose you? And so really start with what I call that bold statement, right? That why would it be good for me to work for you? Now, it has to be factual, Chuck, right? We can't be like, come work for us and you'll get a new car. Well, maybe you will, right? So if some of those jobs out there, you might get a new car, right? But you got to figure out what it is for you there. And I always, when we do this in a workshop, I always say, okay, I want 2 sentences that's going to grab my attention and then suck me in to be like, oh, I need to read all this. But do I have time to give an example?
Yeah, let's get an example.
So I was doing this exercise, and there was a person in my course, and I forget what she was doing. But so she started out, great benefits, great da-da-da-da. But like halfway through, she said, you get to work mom hours. And so first I had to qualify what mom hours were. But what she was saying is that these jobs were during school time, right? And so during school time, and so that's your lead in, right? That should be up top and it should be maybe not mom hours, right? Because we don't want to discriminate, right? We want to be inclusive, but do you want to work while your kid's in school? Right?
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh, I'm interested. That's something that I'm looking for. Now I'm going to read the rest of the ad, right? And so again, it's like writing a newspaper, it's right? Writing that ad in there and doing that. So that's my 2 cents. I know
Yeah.
you've had experience with this, so I'd love to hear what you think as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I could just put ditto, but I will give you a technical aspect about Indeed and even Monster, a few other places. They do allow you to bold font. So when you do that first statement or two, you could put it in bold up top. And they also allow italicized too, if you want to make it stand out from the regular job posting. The one thing I always say, John, is don't make the job posting look like a job description.
Right.
Okay. Don't make it look at a job description. But in regards to what you said, I'll give you an example. I was hiring nurses for a Medicare supplement company. They needed nurse reviewers, right? Well, what do nurses work? They're working crazy hours, 410s, the overnight shifts, late shifts, and all this stuff. Hey, guess what? How would you like to work Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. year round with weekends off? What? Okay, you want to talk about a bold statement up front that got attention? That got attention. And so things like that, exactly what you said, that's another example of to play on what you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
the
think
other thing is,
okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you
okay.
go.
The other thing is the theming it. So I'm now functioning temporarily as the HR director down at a resort in the Florida Keys, right? So in addition to being the team at HR Stories here, folks, I also do consulting. John does consulting, and part of my consulting takes me to places where I'm a temporary HR director. And so I'm rewriting the job postings. We're in the Florida Keys. We're at a 4-star resort, 4 diamonds. The restaurant has been recognized by Forbes, and so I put that up front. Hey, work in the Florida Keys. Check out this award-winning restaurant, 4 Diamond Resort. This is for an executive sous chef. An executive sous chef is someone that's out there looking for their next gig, their next really great thing to put on their resume, to build themselves. That's appealing to them. The old job description said, job title, executive chef, reports to executive chef, status, exempt. Job duties, must do this, this, and this. Experience, boom, boom. I'm like, what? No. We're gonna. I call it zhooshing it up. We're gonna zhoosh it up. So I just wrote that today, and the GM here and everyone, they love it. So, anyways, theming it for the culture engagement is a big piece too.
Yeah. Again, why should I choose you, right? Why should the candidate choose your organization? You have to sell it. It's mini marketing. Let's do it. So
boom, got it.
What's the second question, Chuck? I'm going to let you ask the second one too. I'm going to give you a little leeway here.
This question is specifically for you because you are, as I call you, leadership coach, guru, and you just don't play it on TV. You are one. And folks, if you're looking for an executive coach or someone to do coaching for your folks, John's the person. So this is from Tanya on the HR team of One Community, and also, I believe, a listener. She says, hey, she goes, they say, whoever they is, John, Tanya says, they say that employee engagement is measured by the company's level of trust and psychological safety. Interesting term there. As a manager, how do you create an environment where employees can be brave, have no fear of speaking up? Could you share some examples if you have any? And I know, John, you have no idea how to answer this question. So if you need help, we'll do a lifeline.
Can I get a lifeline? Oh my God, this is it, right? Oh my God, I love this question.
This is you.
And I love it because I've been really working and looking at this lately. So there is a Harvard psychologist, a Harvard professor, who has been really studying teams and teaming, right? And so teams are a group of people that have been together, in her eyes, been together for a long time, that kind of stuff. But in the corporate world, in our business world, teaming is when a team gets together, maybe for a short period of time, maybe for an extended period of time, but members come and go, right? So think of your typical department. Somebody leaves, somebody comes. So we're really more teaming than we are a team. And so when she was looking at what makes these teams most effective, it was all about psychological safety, right?
Right.
And so psychological safety is that ability that I can come to work, and if I know if I make a mistake or I do something wrong, my team's going to cover for me. My team's going to help me. My team's going to support me. They're not going to judge me. They're not going to put me down, right? And so it's that ability to come to work and have trustworthiness and be there. And she uses the example of, I don't know if you remember this, when it was down in South America, when the mine collapsed, I think it was Colombia, when the mine collapsed and there was those 33 miners that were trapped a mile underneath the ground. And so in terms of teaming, there were people coming from all different industries. There were people coming from all different countries, and they had to solve this problem. And so there had to be this internal trust to make those things happen and do it really quickly, right? And so they did. They ended up saving these individuals. Miraculously, they did that. And so, right. So when we think about that in the organization, we have to be able to build trust up, right? That's the first thing. How do we build trust up? How do we make sure that people are there, right? So then again, building that trust, having that trust is going to build that psychological safety. And it really starts with our managers being trustworthy, and then also trusting their team to do their jobs. And if they make a mistake, they're holding them accountable. Don't get me wrong, but they're not dinging them. They're not knocking them down. They're not, speaking down to them. They're trusting them, and they're kind of bringing all that together. And so I think there's a lot of things we can do in there. I mean, I could go on for days on this subject, and I talk about it in my class, but really, psychological safety is good. It's about trusting. The first thing I will tell managers in this is you have to be vulnerable, right? We have to be saying, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm going to make a mistake. Because when we do that, that allows other people to admit that they're making mistakes. And then we learn from all that and we build the team up.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I was HR director for a company one point in my career, and there was no psychological safety. Now, people were absolutely in fear, and there was so much fear of making a mistake, they made mistakes. And the owner of the company was just, he was very calm, and then he would just volcano. And it was like, oh my gosh. And so then that made people even more afraid to make mistakes. And now I will tell you, there's a book out there about Netflix. I don't know if you've ever seen this or heard this, but they don't go by the psychological. They do the thing of saying, apparently the culture is, hey, we want people to be afraid, because if they're afraid then that they're going to lose their job, then they're going to do better. I don't know how that seems to have worked for Netflix in some ways, but I would not say that is a long-term successful plan for any group out there that wants, and I wouldn't try it. But if it works for them, thoughts and prayers. Good job.
I mean, obviously they're successful, but how successful really are they? And how much is they using that, right? Again, right, we can go back to the Jack Welch days where he always said, like, get rid of the bottom 10%. He said that, but that's not what happened, right? And so I think we need to be careful when we hear these anecdotes. Oh yeah, fear, that's the way to motivate people. Yeah, it doesn't work, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just telling you, I've been in this business too long. It doesn't work long term.
Yeah,
works for a little
bit.
And
I lived it.
Long term. Yeah,
I lived it. It was horrible. And I got to the point, John, that I quit because I could not convince. Internally, I would not talk someone else into leaving their good job to come to a job where they would be in fear all the time. So good points, good answers.
All right, third question, Chuck. Are you ready? I'm gonna ask you this one.
Oh my.
All right. Yeah, don't get too nervous. No fear there. Right. And so this is anonymous. This is one from our anonymous vault. But here it is. I work for a landscape company and we do snow removal. We hired a woman who is pregnant. One of the supervisors is worried she cannot lift snow and feels like she shouldn't be called to work. Can we ask her to provide doctor's note to make sure she has no restriction? We want to be compliant with the PDA, so the Pregnancy Disability Act. Is that what it is? I don't think that's right.
It's Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act. They may have had it wrong in the question, but that's what they're referring to.
Got it. Okay. So what do you think?
Well, first of all, there's a couple of laws that cover pregnancy. So yeah, there's the Pregnancy Fairness Workers Act, which came in effect this past year, 2023, and there's also, as part of the EEOC Civil Rights Act, an amendment regarding pregnant employees and not discriminating. The bottom line with this one right off the bat is you cannot ask them. You can go ahead and you can say, here's the job description, here's the requirements, here's the lifting. Are you able to do that? If they say they can, then they can. You can't say, well, you need to prove it. Because now you could say that if you're doing it to every employee there and it's part of a program that you're doing that. But overall, to go up and say, and there are plenty of cases where the EEOC has brought a lawsuit against a company where the company was like, oh, you can't do that. We're moving you to a different job. We're moving you to another location. We're gonna send you home on a permanent leave, so to speak, because we don't want you to hurt yourself. And you can't do that. I remember there's a famous case from UPS a couple years ago where a package delivery person wanted to keep delivering packages. She was pregnant, and UPS said, "Oh no, we're afraid you're going to hurt yourself." Well, she sued. They lost that case. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is the employee has to come to you to ask for the accommodation. They have to come to you. Now, that doesn't mean you can't say, hey, how are you feeling today? Are you doing okay? Is everything fine? You can ask general questions. I mean, we're all going to ask those questions. Hey, how you doing? But overall, the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act specifically says, and I'm just going to quote this. I just pulled it up. Covered employers, which is employers with 50 or more employees, you cannot require an employee to accept an accommodation without a discussion about the accommodation between the worker and the employer. So you cannot force an accommodation on someone. That is a violation. There you go. Boom.
Yeah. And I agree totally. And again, I think it's the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act is another level, right? It's another level in doing that. And so again, it's requesting that, hey, we need to make accommodations for those individuals. In this case, are they shoveling? Are they driving? It's snow shovel, lots of different things going on there. And again, I would just check with everyone. Okay, does everyone have what they need? Is there any concerns, anything going on? And if they do need an accommodation, make the accommodation. I worked at a company called QVC. I might have said that once or twice. And we had individuals, right? So in our control room, we had about 8 or 10 people working at any shift, right? And so at times we had pregnant workers that were working in this control room. Now, the rule was that you could not have any food or drink in the control room. We found, I don't know if Chuck, if you've ever found this out, that water and technology do not mix. But, right? Yeah, don't put it on your thing. But sometimes some of the pregnant workers, the doctors say you need access to water on a regular basis. You need that there, right? And so we would then give them that accommodation that, yes, you can have a adult sippy cup, as it were, in there.
Yes.
Right. And so you would have to have it covered, and you can have a straw and do all that stuff. That way, if it spilled, it wasn't going to be bad. Right. And so we would make those accommodations in that area. And I think a lot of the times we're looking and we're like, oh, well, we can't give an accommodation. Oh, it's too much. Just take time, go through the process and see what the right accommodation is.
Yeah. And by forcing, and the Pregnancy Discrimination Act was an amendment to so that was the first Pregnancy Act. And then we have the next one from this past year. Ironically, by forcing an employee to take another job, to do something different, that they are, ironically, by thinking they don't want to be in violation of the PDA, they are in violation. So, but you can have those conversations, absolutely, but you can't force it. So good. These are three questions. I'm so excited to share our knowledge. Folks, we are the team at HR Stories, where there's a lesson in every story. You can catch us every other week doing this Q&A segment. But when we're not doing Q&A segment, we are talking about HR in the news, and we are bringing a fantastic story to you about human resources and where a company might have messed up, could have done better, and we break that down in kind of, I call it a true crime type of thing, where who done it and what could they have done better. So we have fun, folks. We have fun. So thank you for joining us. We're at the HR Stories podcast, where there's a lesson in every story.
Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast. The material presented in this podcast is for informational purposes only. Chuck and John always recommend using an employment lawyer or HR consultant to handle any legal concerns or HR issues. We do our best to double check sources and make sure the information we are providing is accurate. We may eliminate or embellish without changing the basic narrative to make the story easier to understand. In certain circumstances, we may change identifying information to protect the innocent. The HR Stories broadcast is brought to you by the team at HR Stories. The team at HR Stories is designed to help anyone with HR responsibilities be better at managing the employee experience. To engage with us, go to the hrstoriesteam.com and learn more about how the team at HR Stories can support your business or nonprofit. Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story.